Soy is fascinating. The price development wasn't really that great, yet the attention on the token stays high. The question is why? Could this attention at some point lead to further price appreciation? Let's have a look at the data most people are not considering. So here's what I mean. I've published several videos on Soy on this channel, and every time the videos tend to outperform the average video. Here there's a 35% more views. It comes mainly from search. Here is 87% more views, and here it's not even counted, but it's also a multiple X of what usually a video on this channel gets. So there's a lot of attention on Soy. Yet, in the last month, the price didn't do anything. We are still at $3.65, a 2% increase, while at the same time, Bitcoin went up by 14%. But let's have a look at this a bit more systematically. This is the Soy price relative to the Bitcoin price over the long term. So the chart starts in May 2023. And there are times when Soy tends to underperform Bitcoin and other times where we've got outperformance. It's a pretty interesting wave pattern. The last month wasn't too great. And if this trading range is any indication, the potential downside is higher than the potential upside. Let's continue with that exercise. Here's Soy relative to Ethereum. Now this looks different. Yes, we do have somewhat of a floor. And yes, there was somewhat of a resistance as well. But we broke out of that. It seems like long-term Soy tends to outperform Ethereum. Here's Soy relative to Solana. Again, initially it was mainly pain. That was an underperformance of 93%. But since July of last year, so almost for 1 year, we have seen Soy outperform Solana by now more than 400%. Here, by the way, is the Soy dominance. So how much of all of crypto is currently in Soy? Now the main question is, what's the price driver of Soy? There is supply and demand. Let's start off with the supply because that's the easier part of the equation. Now here's the Soy price long term, and here's the Soy market cap long term. Now why do those charts look different? The answer is supply, or expressed a bit more eloquently, tokenomics, as in how many new tokens get issued over time. The supply of Soy increased massively. We used to be at only 500,000 tokens. So that was 2 years ago in May 2023. And that grew to 3.3 billion. So more than a 6x. Again, in the span of just 2 years. The supply will continue to grow, but at least relatively speaking, relative to the current base, the growth isn't that bad anymore. 2 years from now, we will be at 4.2 billion. So that's less than 30% growth, right? From 200% growth to only 30% growth. Tokenomics aren't that bad anymore going forward. There used to be a big problem for Soy in the past. And that was probably the main reason why we saw these massive declines historically. Since the supply growth isn't that much anymore going forward, we're probably not going to see similar 70% declines relative to Bitcoin anymore. So that's the supply. But let's have a look at the demand, as in how much is the Soy network been used? How much capital is there? How much trading activity is there? What kind of revenue gets generated? Let's look at all of those things now. Over here is the total value locked of the blockchain. So that's in US dollars, and it seems to be healthy growth long term. However, a lot of that growth is just the Soy token itself appreciating. Because when we look at the total value locked measured in Soy, that chart is not necessarily always going up. We are at the same level compared to 1 year ago. However, even though the capital might not have grown, the trading activity definitely did. So this is now the trading measured in Soy, not in US dollars. This does constantly grow. So that's good, because if the capital goes sideways while the trading activity grows, that means that the people that provide the capital on the chain, they get more return. Because that's how fundamentally decentralized finance works, right? There are people that provide capital, and then there are short-term traders. The short-term traders, they pay fees for swapping, and those fees partially go to the capital providers. And so the more fees there are relative to the capital, the better for the capital provider, the higher the ROI. The bridge total value locked also tends to grow long term, and so do the number of stable coins over time. So while the total value locked on Soy is not growing, the activity is going up, and that additional activity will of course also attract more capital again. My impression is that short term there's unfortunately also a lot of leverage in the Soy price, because Soy gets traded very actively on the derivatives market, on the perpetual futures, and perpetual futures tend to be very short-term in nature. The capital goes in and out very quickly. Soy is the 6th largest asset in terms of open interest on the perpetual futures market. The funding rate tends to be positive, so that means the longs have to pay the shorts. The majority of perp traders bet on rising prices. And here's the relationship of the spot price relative to the open interest on the perp market. So when the open interest on the perp market, this green line is going up, the spot price tends to follow and vice versa. Just have a look at this. When the open interest crashed, the spot price also tended to deflate. Currently, open interest is again very high, which could short-term push up the price further. The market is somewhat balanced. The liquidations are at a constant level, and it's sometimes the longs, sometimes the shorts that get liquidated. But in general, there is buying pressure coming from the perpetual futures. Again, because most people bet on rising prices, and then of course arbitrage bots buy up on the spot market and push up the spot price. Now fundamentally, the problem is that returns are very much concentrated in a few assets. Most assets tend to go down, and there are a few altcoins that make the multiple X return. And the problem is those assets change over time. What worked well yesterday might not work tomorrow. And so it's always a game against the odds. And so we can't really deploy a lot of capital in those trades. If the likelihood of losing is very high, it means we can't deploy too much in the position. It also means we can't necessarily diversify, because if we now own 10 or 20 tokens, most of those tokens are losing. And if then the few outliers make up for all the losses is a completely different question. It's very unclear. Now there is a way to make money a bit more consistently, and that's actually trading the larger tokens. The issue with the larger tokens though is that they move very much in tandem with the overall market. As in, when Bitcoin goes up, then Solana tends to go up as well, Ethereum tends to go up as well. But there are movements within crypto where sometimes a particular asset class is more preferred than another one. And we can play on that relative valuation. We can play on attention moving from A to B within crypto without having to try to find the few winners. For example, have a look at this. This is the Solana dominance. So how much of all of crypto is currently in SOL? And there seems to be somewhat of an invisible ceiling between 3 to 4%. This is where Solana historically had been very expensive. Or have a look at this. This is the Ethereum dominance. It tends to be very cheap when only 7% of all of cryptocurrency's market cap is in ETH. It tends to be expensive when it's around 20 or 21%. And so we can benefit from this independent of where the US dollar valuations go. So if Bitcoin is going up or down does not interest us. The only thing that interests us is whether or not Ethereum will perform better than Solana, or Solana will perform better than Ethereum, just relatively speaking. So I saw that set up when Ethereum was extremely cheap in the middle of April. We got very close to the historical low that was formed in September of 2019. And so have a look at this. This is Solana relative to Ethereum. And when ETH hit that low point, I shorted Solana relative to ETH. So I was not interested at all in the Solana US dollar price or in the Ethereum US dollar price. I was only interested in the relative valuation. I saw we are high on the trading range, and I bet on that range coming down. So here's that post. It's from April 13th. I'm opening a relative valuation short of SOL to Ethereum using Venus Finance. More information will be provided in a few hours in today's premium update video. So I publish premium updates every 3 to 4 days. And then on May 20th, I closed the position. And of course, other members made money with this as well. But I want to share something here. This is when the position was opened. Here is when the position was closed. And I want you to look at the Solana value. Again, we bet on Solana doing worse than Ethereum. Solana itself actually went up during the time. It appreciated by 25%, but Ethereum appreciated more than that. It went up by more than 50%. And so we completely canceled out the macro. We are not interested at all whether or not everything is going up or down on a given day. We made money just on the relative valuation. So within those few weeks, we went from 43K to almost 60K. Yes, I know these kind of strategies might seem a bit complex, and why don't we just buy an altcoin and make it 10x? But again, it's all about risk-adjusted returns. If we want to bet significant capital, tens of thousands of dollars, or let's say relative to your net worth, high percentages. If we don't just want to play with play money, but we actually want to make real gains, We need to use strategies that don't have an 80 or 90% chance of failure. I see people making these mistakes all the time. I even see people making mistakes with their risk off position. So let's say they don't want to be exposed to crypto, they just want to be in stable coins, let those stable coins just stay laying in the wallet. But there are opportunities to make very nice constant returns even with stablecoins. So this is 16% APR. This can be achieved on Hyperliquid without a single trade. This is all just automated arbitrage by the market maker. But of course, I've also got my risk on part of the portfolio. And here's something other people don't show. Most people just show individual trades and say, hey, this is how we always make money. Very few people are actually willing to share their overall portfolio performance. Now, I started trading on Hyperliquid on April 22nd, and here is my P&L over time. And since I'm sharing all of my trades, the members can just copy me. And this is actually very nice feedback. The same kind of portfolio development chart. This chart tells a story, first trying it without any support, and then afterwards, where this green arrow is shown, exclusively following Gerhard's trade and slowly digging out of the hole. If you've got the right risk management in place, there's actually a lot of money to be made in this market still. But actually, I don't want that everybody is just copy trading me. The community is about elevating our skills. It's about learning as much as possible, helping each other, finding market opportunities, and then of course capitalizing on those opportunities. So I've actually made more than 100 tutorial videos just on various topics within crypto, risk management, portfolio valuation, blockchain analysis. Feel free to binge watch this. It's actually nice to get those DMs. Hey Gerhard, I just wanted to thanks a lot for everything you've done. Since I've only been listening to you, I've been consistently profitable now. I just entered your, I've blacked this out, XYZ position as well. Or here, this is also another nice message. I'm not going to read through all of this. Feel free to stop the video. But yeah, if you want to join us, if you want to copy trade me, if you want to learn more about crypto, feel free to check it out. It's currently $125 per month. The price has actually been lowered because now the attention on crypto is much lower than it used to be a few months back. Once the masses come back in again, then the price will be back to $165. So if you're signing up today, you will never pay a higher price. If it's your first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish here regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. It helps the channel grow. See you next time on YouTube or see you in Premium. Cheers.